So it's actually Thursday today as opposed to Friday, and today I'm joined with my good friend Per. How you doing?
Well, I'm good, thanks. You?
Yeah, good mate, good. So obviously we had to kind of change schedule a little bit, move from Friday to a Thursday because you guys have some internal football tournament match game.
Super important stuff, you know.
Oh, exactly. Get your priorities right. Yeah.
You should know you're English. You're like football is like the #1 thing, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. Yeah, whenever a game's on, we just all put our tools down and that's it, turn the laptops off. Nothing gets done.
Yeah.
But, so it's been not that too long since I probably last spoke to you, but today we're going to talk about Umbraco, well, I was going to say Umbraco Contour, but it's now the artist formerly known as Umbraco Contour because it's been renamed to Forms, yes?
Yeah, we thought that was a more telling name. Contour was a great name. It started with C, as everything else.
Yeah, and then it gets a little bit confusing with all the kind of internal, well not internal, but all the product names. Is it Contour? Is it Concierge? Is it Courier?
Yeah, we have a lot of CEO names of this stuff. I think we're basically trying to rename everything as we release new versions of it from now on. So Contour is the first one, which will just be called Forms, and Courier will be next at some point and just be called Employment or something. And
so basically, does what it says on the tin.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
We tried the whole marketing naming thing, and it just doesn't work. People actually like to have things named for what they are. So.
Yep.
Yeah. It's much easier. So, yeah. So that's why we're changing it.
So, okay, so in the 7.2 beta that Sebastian showed us last week, the Umbraco Forms is kind of part of the installation, or at least a section icon is part of the installation. Is there any reasoning kind of behind that, or is there kind of what was the choice for that decision?
There was a choice for that decision. First of all, we decided to add Forms in as a pre-made section. To be able to expose people to what Forms actually is and make it interesting for them. You can see on 8 out of 10 installs, we can see Forms being installed. So we made it something that's easy to opt out of. It's not very intrusive. We only place it in that very specific section. It's shown to the people who actually want to install it.
Okay.
So that's the reason why we're doing it.
Okay. So I can understand that reasoning. So is it kind of pre-installed then, or is there kind of, do I have to actually action something?
The only thing that's actually pre-made is that it contains an icon, it's already there, but it just comes with this pre-made section that's called Forms. And that's nice actually. So the only thing we have in there is dashboard, and that dashboard then has a link to our, which can then enable you to install the package if you want.
Okay, so it's just a nice, easy way to kind of bring awareness and just get it installed. Yeah.
So the core Umbraco doesn't contain any Forms specific code, anything that's licensed under a specific license, anything. Everything that is our own private bits are still kept on our as a normal package.
So maybe we should jump into a demo and kind of see what's new and find out what's changed from Contour to Umbraco Forms.
Sounds good. So let me just get everything wrong. I just need my site to be sure that everything's good, but it should. So.
Yep. Yeah. There we go.
You can see everything now. Right, so this is just built on the local.gov site as a standard demo site now, because local.gov is built on Bootstrap 3, and most of the stuff that we do, both on the grid and the forms, is built on Bootstrap 3.
Okay.
Well, it's already pre-installed it, so we don't have to wait for that. So this is the new dashboard. It just contains the forms that you have in here, and then the number of entries that's actually on the form now, which is the single most important information for people who already created the form and actually just looking if there's any progress in getting submissions back from the form. So we kind of boil everything down to that specific thing.
Okay, so is that showing the total number of submissions, or is that total? Because obviously in previous, or in kind of Contour, you had the kind of state of pending approval. I can't remember the exact phrase or term that you guys used, but it was like there was a previous state before kind of being approved, or does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So we still have that. We still have, and a record can still be approved or not approved, just submitted.
Okay.
We still have that, but we remove the other stuff in there, so you can't have an incomplete record anymore. We'll be taking an explanation for that, but this number here is the complete number of submitted and approved records.
Okay.
So the way we're building this now is that we also have a records JavaScript API. So if you need to build like specific dashboards with more information about your form, you can actually do that. So we have a record filter you could submit to this service and actually get very detailed information out. So
fantastic.
So this is just very, very basic, but which just gives us a simple number back of the number of records that we actually have in here. But we also have the same service that powers the entries view over here. Actually, just return a big chunk of JSON, so you can actually do more bits on analyzing what kind of content you have in there, when you got it, and so on. So
okay, so if so using your kind of JavaScript API, we could create a custom or extend that dashboard that you've just shown, and give better reporting tools specific to our workflows.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so that's the way. That's one of the beauties by just switching everything over into Angular. All the new UI in Forms has been built. So having that clean separation between what is UI and what is actually data on the server, clean separation now. So when we browse around in form entries now, we just kind of populate up a JSON filter and send that off to the server, and we get a bunch of JSON record. So that means that we can actually expose that service to anyone else who actually wants to build components using record data directly in the back office.
Okay, fantastic.
So that's the idea of having a very simple dashboard that just gives you very simple information, but you can always expand on it. And we're also planning on doing more detailed data in this dashboard later on. But for this initial version, which is basically a version 1.0, it's just getting the basic part.
Okay. So it sounds like a lot of thought has gone into this, and kind of a lot of maybe not re-architecting, but maybe some restructure has been going on to make this a bit more streamlined and a bit more faster by the seams of it.
Yeah. So one of the most often heard critiques of Contour or Forms has been that it's very hard to actually control your form layout. So to actually be able to allow people to have greater control over these things, we had to re-architect a lot of the stuff in here. And as we did that, we also figured out that, we actually have a lot of underlying architecture and dependencies that we could just might as well get rid of, because there are better ways of doing things now. So I think today, by restructuring all these things, I think we removed like 10 or 12 database tables that we don't need anymore.
Okay.
So it's much easier to install Contour now, or Forms, and it's much easier to actually move forms from one place to another, because all the forms, all the workflows, all the data sources are now file-based.
Okay, so everything is kind of serialized to a physical file.
Yeah.
So I presume this is kind of been done to kind of help with the ongoing work with Umbraco as a service, so that you can move a newly created form to one instance to another, or even if we was not using Umbraco as a service, that we could move forms and workflows or data sources from one instance or environment to another.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it. But it's one of the extra benefits of actually having Umbraco as a service that we become very aware of what is really bothering people about deployments. So instead of having database tables that we have to serialize into files and then serialize it back into database table data, then just keep it as files and have it all over through. So a form today has like a very long GUI-based ID, but that also means cleanly move it over. So every time we reference a form or a data source or a pre-value form or a workflow, then we reference it by GUID that's easily to move over. So all the stuff that's not record data is just a file now.
Okay, so the only thing that's stored in a database table is kind of the, like you say, the record data or the entries or form submissions.
So that's a bit of the technical background of it. So one of the other thing about forms and them being hard to move is that it's hard to lay out. So completely rebuilt the form editor. You kind of take advantage of a lot of the stuff that we learned from the grid editor. So it kind of follows a lot of the same ideas that we have from that one. And we also taken a lot of the ideas that we took from building the form editor and put it back into the grid. So these two editors have more and more common code in between each other. But we also made sure that forms can also run on something that's older than 7.2, so you don't need 7.2 to kind of run forms. You can run on 7.1 and 7.0 forms.
Okay.
So if you haven't seen the grid editor, then this is very much like it. You get a menu here of stuff that you can put in.
So so like the grid editor, you can define what kind of fields or editors that can go in a row or a column or a section. Can we do this with the forms grid layout editor, Dudar? So when you're clicking plus there, obviously you've got checkbox and so on and so on and so on, and we, in previous versions of Contour Forms, we can add to that list. Can we restrict what is selectable so that editors or can't create ugly layouts or can't use specific fields or editors, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so specific editors are not allowed to use specific editors. Not at the moment, but it's a good point. It's a very good idea. So it's not something we actually had in mind when we built this, but it's not rocket science to add.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's definitely a good idea. So I'll just write it down as a feature request.
There we go, feature request number 1.
But looking at the stuff we have in here, we basically took the different editors one to one over, I think. So the most of the new stuff in here is that we are able to apply a text component in the middle of the form, for example, like this one here, which just allows you to write a bit of text. And it's very basic, but it's actually something that people actually very often need.
Sometimes you split up the form with some explanation data to what you're going to fill out below, potentially.
Yeah, exactly. So just having that makes a lot of sense to a lot of editors. It's a basic thing, but it just makes sense. The other thing is that people would actually like to have few fields next to each other. So if I can actually get this button working right now, you can actually insert a column, and then you
very nice
over in there. So you can have stuff in 2 columns if you want to as well. And you can also then insert a row and break that up so it's not in 2 columns anymore, but in 1, and so on. And then each individual column has like icons as well.
Nice.
So all of this follows the same idea as the grid. The grid just stores your data as a JSON blob, and this does as well, just serialize to files that are put into a property data. And then you can use it the same way. So we basically do form templating or form HTML generation the same way that we do grid HTML generation.
Okay.
So we actually just give this form object to our method that applies a razor template to it. So it's very transparent on how this form data here is turned into Bootstrap 3 based form markup on the template.
Okay.
So if you try, what form was I working on? This one here.
Yep.
Take that and put that into a page. Here. Here's this one here. So again, you can see the only way we reference this is it will be a form GUID. So again, this template can be safely moved over if you want to deploy it. So if we go into the page that this is inserted into, then we get the 2-column with some weird text I wrote in here, and then of course this is just crammed in there, but of course you would probably adjust your your styling no matter what. But you have it here in a 2-column, and it just follows the Bootstrap convention. So the only thing we actually generate for you is Bootstrap-based HTML. And then in the middle of it, we have each individual editor, which is a separate razor file. So this follows the same convention as the.
Okay.
Look a bit about how this is built.
So if I want to override or add a CSS-specific class to, I don't know, a text area. I would have to edit the text area piece of Razor for this form.
Yeah, it is. No, we changed it a bit. So what we actually have now is we actually have a form rendering API which we can pass in a view name, like you can pass in a view name to the grid API. So you can tell it to say use this specific view instead of using the standard one. And the standard views are in here. So in views, partials, and then forms. So this follows the exact same way of doing things as we had in the grid. And it's a razor file. So in here, whoops, does not exist. Okay. There we go. So in here you can see we just get a model that represents the form, then we iterate through everything. So if you need to change something, then you have access to everything in here. We don't do any, could you say, behind the scenes in-code processing of anything at all. So if you have some very specific needs, or you just think this is the stupidest way ever to render HTML, then you can just change it and just build up your own form render as well.
Okay. That's nice.
But usually if you have very specific needs, you're saying, well, this thing actually have a very specific class, or this thing up here needs to have a wrapper, and so on.
Yeah.
So usually it's just like small edits into one file you actually do. But you have the option actually of controlling everything. Okay.
So could I have the full control of, say, form A uses a specific kind of layout, or I suppose view partials and things like that, and form B can use another set of view partials for some obscure reason that you need to do, I don't know, something really totally different. Could it be possible?
Every time something is obscure, then there's at least 10 people who want to use it that way. So nothing is obscure anymore.
Yep.
But we actually have the way that we render forms. This is the macro that we insert when we install forms, where we need a bit of parameters. And as far as I remember, you can actually just give it a view in here.
Okay.
Like so. And that will look into partials, forms,
my view. Okay.
So you can do it this way, and of course you can take this view and make that into a macro parameter, so you can insert it directly. Yeah. So this is the way of actually rendering the raw form if you want to do it directly like this.
Okay. Yeah. So anything's near enough totally possible. It's just knowing where to look or where to extend stuff.
So of course there's a whole part of actually writing some documentation to tell people about how to do this, but yeah, it is definitely possible to do. We can easily swap, and because it's one of the main complaints about forms is this that people want greater control, and they don't want to have to mess around with the HTML that we render. They actually want to control it in much greater detail.
Yeah.
So we've tried to at least provide the basics of that, and if people don't like that, then they have the possibility of actually just swapping everything out on a per form basis. If they need to.
No, that's very, very nice. So is Umbraco Forms come with some property editors, or so like in version or in Umbraco Contour and things like that, we had like the form picker data type. Do they still exist? So if I wanted to pick a specific form on a content node or content page, does that exist still?
The data type?
Yeah, like the data type. So it used to be like pick a form, and then I want to pick form Z or whatever, and all it would do is basically get the GUID or the ID of the form, and then you could pass that through to your your template, and then pass that down the chain to some macro, most likely to render the form.
You can, because the way that Umbraco 7 works is that to actually be able to build a macro parameter editor, you need to have it as a property editor and then enable that to be a parameter editor. So it's already in there, like in earlier versions, that you have a form picker property editor that you can use. So okay. You can do that.
Nice, nice. It seems like you've thought of most scenarios already. Is there anything that's not covered?
Sorry?
I was going to say, is there anything that's not covered, do you think?
There's plenty of stuff that's covered. We don't try to be everything and have every feature in there. What we would like to be better at is be better at reporting and be better at actually sharing the form data with different services. So, like the Slack provider you wrote for Contour,
yep.
Having the ability of tying your form activity through to a third-party service is something that we really want to do, but we haven't had time to do it in this initial version.
Mm-hmm.
It's goes beyond what we think of a basic version, but it's very much something we would like to do. You'll be able to submit your forms to a Google Drive spreadsheet. That would be really nice. It would be nice to have better support for sending data to Campaign Monitor or
some CRM or Salesforce. Or,
exactly. So we have the data in a very generic state, and we should be able to process data and turn it into something else that we can send to another service. We already had some of it in the old Contour, where you could basically say send this record as HTML or XML to a endpoint, but it's too generic and it's very hard to use. So I think the strategy going forward is just saying we would like to support these top 5 services and just build very specific components for that.
So there's going to be specific implementations as opposed to a very generic one-fit solution.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
You probably still have the generic one-thing-fits-all kind of thing as the underlying thing, so it will still be available to use. But I think doing very specific implementations of support for very specific services would be better, because again, look at the people using forms. It's not .NET developers, it's not information architects, it's just but it's editors who are non-technical. They don't know how to send XML to a REST service.
No.
So they just want to know how to authenticate against Google Drive and how do I send my stuff to the spreadsheet that I already created. So we'll definitely look into supporting more of these things in the future.
So so that's kind of previously known as workflow items. Is that still the same in this version? So do we still have kind of workflow items when we have a form? So once the form's submitted, I want to send an email. I want it to send to Slack. I want it to send to, I don't know, some other service.
Yeah, it's still the same. We still have workflows. Workflows are not as granular anymore. You can only execute a workflow when a form is submitted and when a form is approved.
Yep.
That's the only 2 states that we actually want to support with workflows. We also, before, we had like when a form is actually started being filled out, which is kind of weird. And really hard to support in a consistent manner, because every time a page loads, that would trigger a workflow.
Could be a bit crazy.
It will just make things explode. And we also had any time that a form changed page state. So you'd have like a partially written record submitted, and it was kind of strange as well.
Yeah.
So the only thing we have now is when a form is actually persisted into our database, we trigger a workflow against it. That means that we know the data is available, we can access it, and it will always be there. Whereas before we had like some data in memory and some not, and it was very inconsistent.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Also, just looking at what people actually use workflows for is just, well, these are the kind of points they want to hook onto. So, we decided to simplify it. But it is still the same thing. It's still, API-wise, it's still the same. Right? The way we do it now is we save a workflow as an individual file and attach it to a form file and so on. So, but other than that, it's like a form.
Okay. So is the entries layout any different since previous versions? So looking at submissions in the grid or in entries?
A little. You can't do as much. Well, we've actually stolen the whole filtering thing you would expect. Version doesn't work because I don't have any records in here.
You're in the money. All right then. All right. No pressure now. No pressure now.
Trying to do one more.
So, right navigation. Hour.
Nice picture of a dog.
I only have horrible photos from all my demos.
Oh, good.
So the stuff we do now is we've added this in, so we have a preview of files actually going in.
That's nice.
Records. Again, this was something that people were kind of annoyed of. That I can see there's a file in here, but then I have to actually take this thing and copy paste it into the browser to actually be able to see it. So we made a more detailed view of each record now.
That's nice. So what happens if we have lots more fields added to the table? Previously, we would kind of get a very horizontally scrolling table. What happens now if we add quite a lot more fields in? Does the
That's an excellent question.
We'll find out.
Yep. So save this thing and do this, and then it scrolls.
Nice. Okay. Now, so where before it would actually break the, or not break, but you would have like the horizontal scroll in terms of the entire Umbraco back office, as opposed to just like the table or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, I'm assuming you've got some kind of searching and filtering by date. Is that?
Yeah, it worked like an hour ago, but now it's broken.
Typical. You broke it.
If you install your own analytics package, then you see an exact copy of this thing. So you can. The search works now, so you can see it filters as I type.
So I presume as well, in terms of how it looks like the table is set up, if I click on a field name, does it toggle it A to Z, descending, ascending, if I toggle a field?
It doesn't currently, because we don't have like this very generic sorting of one field. I'm afraid not yet. We can do it. We just need to optimize it. It's too slow right now, so we decided not to do it.
That's fair enough. Yep. And how does the table or grid, or these entries results work with lots of records? Do we get pagination similar to the list view?
Exactly. So it follows the same standards as the list view. So I think it can hold 20 records per page, and that works fast enough. And same with search, to get that paid as well. Again, it goes back to writing a specific service to actually retrieving records. Search and retrieving these records and everything is kind of powered by the same thing.
Okay.
Single method to filter records out.
So in previous versions of Contour, we had so if you select a record for me, just like one of them. Ticket. In previous versions, we could add or have like a little kind of context menu, as far as I remember, and have like send to some service or do something or do some custom action. Is that possible to do that?
So I think by default the only two actions that's in here is just approve and delete, but you can add your own action. So these two are just actions we added to the system by default, but you can write your own action as before.
Okay, so I can create a new one, which is, I don't know, push to Slack, send to Google Drive or whatever. Okay.
So that's the same thing as well. So a lot of the underlying parts are still the same in that way.
Okay. So is there many new APIs that we need to learn, or is it very, very similar, or is the kind of the public-facing APIs the same and the internal code is only different, so we don't have to learn new stuff, or what's the, I suppose, the deal with using and getting data back out of this in a flexible way if we need to via APIs?
So the APIs are still the same.
Okay.
We use the same APIs almost. You can't take your own stuff and just use it directly because some of the method signatures have changed a bit, but they are still called the same. They are still in the same namespace and so on. So you can still use it that way. We've taken most of what was done for adding MVC support for Contour and just built on that basically. The only thing we ripped out of that is actually supporting web forms as a mix, which is kind of weird to keep supporting. So Forms doesn't support web forms. We don't do anything to try to support it at all. So you can't put this into a web forms site. That's one of the things we just decided from the beginning, that web forms is theoretically dead, I guess. So
yeah, I was going to say it's on its way out.
Yeah, so we didn't want to keep supporting it. It made for some interesting code to keep supporting it, so that's one of the things we cut. But if you use the latest APIs that was in the latest version of Contour, then they will most likely not directly work, but they will be the same.
Okay, so it'll be very, very similar, or if not the same. Okay, that's reassuring. So it's not, I haven't got to learn like, oh, okay, there's this new, I don't know, fancy hidden method that I need to learn, which is in some different namespace, and I'm going to have to figure this all out again from scratch.
And we didn't decide to invent a new language or something like that. No.
Oh, you did. Oh, what a shame.
Sorry.
So no, it's looking really good so far. Is there anything else that we've kind of not discussed that's kind of that we've not seen so far in the demo?
No, I don't think so. Actually, I think we got around it pretty quickly, actually. But again, it follows a lot of the same conventions that we had before. So we haven't really done anything new. One of the things we do now is we have an auto-updating way of having forms installed. So if you have forms installed, you will see every time we update the builds. If this is still a preview or beta version. So every time we push new features into our 90 build server, you'll now get notified and see it on your dashboard.
Okay, so is that an opt-in thing? So if do I have to kind of say, look, I want the latest, go and fetch it for me, or does it just happen?
It doesn't just install stuff. It just tells you that there is something available you can install, and then you can click a button and you'll download everything and unzip it and put it into the right places, and then it will restart your site, refresh your browser, and then you should be good to go. Yeah,
it's very, very nice. Yeah, I like that. Is that the intention of as you move or rebrand or redo the existing kind of product or extensions for Umbraco to go all that way? Because it seems an interesting pattern to use.
Yeah, this is the first time we use this pattern. Again, this is just testing out the infrastructure, how we could do it. So I think based on feedback on how this goes and how many of these upgrades that will fail and make things explode, and which is one, but we have to see how it goes. This is the first time we try to do things like that, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Also because the way that we built forms from the is actually to say this doesn't actually need a installer anymore. The way that Forms is installed now is that it has a application event handler that checks if things are installed. And if things are not installed, then it'll run the installer. So that means you actually don't have to install this package. You can just dump the file into root of the site, and it will, and then it will install everything you need.
So in theory, it could be a NuGet package then, if you're saying in theory.
In theory, we haven't done a NuGet package, but it is something that's certainly possible.
Okay.
So this is a pattern we're trying out. I think it's very interesting what we can do with it. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. But the way we do it now is we put an Umbraco Forms folder in here and then some stuff in the bin. And that is pretty good. So when stuff is installed, it just keeps like this small installed token file in here, and it also has a version file in here.
Yep.
So that's kind of, so if I remove this version file here, and
will your version checker then kick in?
It should, if I refresh it.
He says.
Now we have a cookie in here. I don't know if it actually kicks in now because we have a cookie that doesn't actually try to check anything for you the first 24 hours. Because if people download something and they are instantly notified that something needs to be upgraded, then wait, what did I just install? So to kind of avoid that, you install and then ask to upgrade. we have a buffer in here, so I don't think it'll kick in now. But normally, if 4 hours has passed, then it will kick in and tell you. So.
Nice. So was the decision to move the kind of the extension or the product away from the Umbraco folder? Because obviously previously, many versions ago, we had core extensions in Umbraco /plugins/Umbraco Contour, I think, off the top of my head.
Yeah, we removed it because it's super hard to maintain. And it's also really hard for people to determine what should be deployed. Should this be checked into source control? What is this thing actually? So by mixing it with the Umbraco core folder, it just made a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
Having this in one folder and with a bunch of assemblies, then we have a much better way of actually communicating what this thing actually is.
Yeah, I think that's a lot smarter move.
So of course, we can't do it because of the way .NET is built, but if we could have all the assemblies inside of that Umbraco Forms folder, then of course we would, but you can't. So, but if we could just have one folder that if we remove that, then it will just clean everything up, then of course we would do that. It's nice to have things in just one folder. But
yeah, of course. Until you rewrite the .NET framework or something.
Yeah, we're working on that. So we're
we're just casually rewriting it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to migrate to Node and then.
Oh, okay.
That was a joke.
Yep. So I think we just got a couple of questions. Unless there's anything else you want to demo or talk through.
Yep.
Okay. So Antoine asks, how do you manage the text translation in case of multi-language forms?
You do that with dictionary items, and you still do that. That's the way it was done in older versions, and we still do that past the.
So if I wanted that checkbox filled,
it gives us.
Sorry, go on.
I still do it the same way. So I think you do like something like that, and then it uses the key. I think it's like just like that. And then you create a dictionary key that's called submit, and then it does this right here. So we have some ideas that it would be nice to have like a dictionary picker for these kinds of fields where I want to put these things in. It will be a for later version, but this is how you do it today. Is how you translate stuff.
Okay, so it's just like it was previously. You just use the hash or pound sign or whatever you want to call it, and yeah, just get the dictionary item key. Yeah, very cool. So Lars Eric Albeck asks, it was a bit late watching the beginning, so this might have already been answered, but I'll let you answer this. Is this a Contour or /Umbraco Forms is going open source announcement?
No, it's not going open source.
No, which is exactly what you covered right at the very, very beginning. So it's still going to be, I presume, the same pricing, the same. Nothing's changed in terms of that side of licensing.
No, and if you have a Contour license, this works as well. So you can't directly upgrade Contour to Forms because of the way that we changed the forms. We can probably help you write some migration scripts if you want to look into that. But I think most people will start using Forms on a new site they already started building, or they'll just migrate the couple of forms they have manually. Or you can use the same license. If you already have a Contour license, this is covered by that as well.
Okay, so
to put it in, just in regards to forms and open source, then of course we would love to make forms open source. We would love to just be able to have it as part of the core, so the core just by default supported generating forms. But again, we also have some way of financing all the development that we put into the core and put into these kinds of things. So it can't be open source.
No, that makes perfect sense. Like you say, you've got to run business and you've got to keep funding development work, and this is a way of doing it. So we have another question. This one is from Mark Bennett, who asks, how does validation work, and can you link that with custom validators?
I think you can, but I need to check the view because I'm not fully into that whole thing with validation. It's completely Tim's domain. If it's not already possible to link it with a custom validator, then of course it should. So I'll have to check with Tim on how we actually do that. If it's not currently possible, then it's definitely a feature we should look into how to support. And validating your data is one of the big things. And if you can't do it right now, then we should be able to allow people to do it in a better way.
Yep. Okay, cool. Steve Morgan asks, is there any baked-in spam-related features for Umbraco Forms? I presume so, like spam bots maybe, or a honeypot. I don't know what he specifically is asking for, but maybe is there anything that's built in?
The only thing that's actually built in is a honeypot, and the honeypot started failing because the bots started being able to identify a little better. So we obfuscated the way that we name the honeypot now, so it should be harder to actually find it and not fill it out. So we improved that honeypot spam prediction that's in there, and it should be much better now. For spam bot and stuff like that, to support that, always using an external service like that always requires an API key, so it's something that we would love to write a provider for, or a workflow that could help you delete records if it's spam. It's not included right now. Again, it's part of us integrating with third-party services later on, but it's definitely possible to just write your own in a workflow.
Okay. I think that's it for questions for the time being. So thank you very much for kind of taking the time up today to demo Umbraco Forms.
Sure.
So yeah, it's an exciting release. It seems like a ton of stuff has gone in between you and Tim.
Yeah, Tim has done a lot of work on this.
So yeah, it's looks like a very polished release, but it's still a 1.0 release to keep in mind.
It is a 1.0, so all the UI bits and a lot of the infrastructure is 1.0. But we'll be following up with the release very quickly, 1.1 and 1.2 and so on, to actually fix all those things that people will inevitably find.
Okay. What's the kind of
do releases on the core, we'll try to do that on Forms as well to kind of follow up very quickly on getting bugs.
Okay. So is there a release cycle pattern or a roadmap similar to how the core is kind of project managed? Or is it just going to be left to its own devices and see how bugs and features come along?
Well, we will have more focus on it here in the initial release days, and there will be periods of time where we don't spend as much time on it. We have to be kind of freely able to move people around internally in the HQ because we have a lot of stuff that so we can't really promise that we'll have a release every 6 weeks or something like that. We'll give it the love it needs. It's not something that we're just releasing now and then ignore for a year and then come back to. It's something that we'll keep on supporting.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, obviously the maintenance of kind of moving resources around from project to project as you need it. But yeah, no, it sounds good that it seems like it's got a lot of love, and it seems like the project's going to go in a new, interesting direction. So yeah, it'd be good to talk to you, Per, and I will see you in round about 2 weeks' time at the Umbraco UK Festival.
Definitely, yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Good.
How many will come?
I think I haven't been doing the logistics, but I think we're 170, 180-ish. I think. I don't quote me on that. But
Looking forward to it. So we're coming 7 from the HQ. So.
I was going to say that the mafia is turning up. So yep, and I've got your runner list sorted, just blue M&Ms and room temperature at 21.5 degrees precisely, and yeah, it's all sorted.
Oh, good thing. That's good.
So have a good day, and thanks for chatting, and see you in a couple of weeks' time, mate.
You won. Good talking.
Excellent. Thanks. Bye.